Welcome back to 8 Metal Strings. Today is the second installment of the selective picking video, and we're going to be building on the technique that we looked at last time called the hammer-on from nowhere. So if you haven't checked out that video, make sure to give it a watch and practice that hammer-on because it's pretty essential to getting this technique down. But today we're going to be adding the pick into the equation and combining both hands in order to create cool rhythmic groupings. And of course there is a free PDF of all of the exercises that we're going to be looking at today in this video, so make sure you download that. It is free and the link can be found in the description below. So let's get into it. So the technique itself is not much more difficult than what we already looked at with the hammer-on from nowhere. All we're going to be doing is combining a pick stroke or two with our hammer-on from nowhere. So let's start out by getting our muting hand on. So we're going to take our right hand and mute across the strings, and for me on my guitar the best spot I find is right in between the bridge and the pickup here. And if I can lay my pinky finger right there across, I can catch every string and avoid any extra ringing while we're doing all these hammer-ons. So we get the mute on, and then have your pick in your fingers. And we're just going to start by hammering on a note on the 5th fret on string 8. And that's going to be our hammer-on from nowhere that we looked at last time. You might have to adjust your muting hand. If you're not getting enough note, pull it back. If you're getting no mute, you might have to add the palm back on a little bit here. So adjust the muting hand until you get the tone that you want with that hammer on. From there, we're going to add a downstroke with that note. And it's just going to follow the downstroke fairly naturally so that we have a pair of two notes. So we're going left hand, right hand. Now the key thing, and probably the main thing to keep in mind about this technique when we're adding the pick in, is we're trying to keep the volume fairly similar between the two hands. We don't want the picking hand to be much louder or vice versa. So try to avoid stuff like this. Alright, we want to try to create a very similar sound. And the timbre is going to be a little bit different because of course we're attacking the string different ways, but that's okay. Just try to be aware of the volume of the notes that are being produced. So if we take a look at the first exercise, this is just going to give us a little finger pattern to work on this moving across some strings. It looks like this. And of course we can reverse it. Do different frets. We can also do different strings. So experiment with different areas on your guitar and different finger patterns as well. The exercises on today's sheet are kind of the base level. So take those and do whatever you want, be as creative as you want with them, and try to explore some different options to make things more interesting for yourself. With these single strokes that follow up our hammer-ons, we can also do upstrokes or alternating strokes. And it also makes more sense when we're going faster and changing strings. So the reason that we're muting when we're doing all of this is because it's a little bit easier to keep track of the tone and the volume of the left hand and right hand notes when we're doing this in the beginning. But once you start to get a feel for it and your notes are fairly consistent, feel free to experiment with not muting the strings and seeing what kind of tones you can achieve. So the hardest thing about learning this part of selective picking is not necessarily combining the pick with the hammer. It comes fairly naturally because we pick most of the things anyway, so adding that back into the equation doesn't really throw any big wrenches into it. What is difficult though, and takes some more time, is getting used to all these different rhythmic groupings that we can accomplish now between two hands. For example, we can now do triplets using a hammer-on and two picks. So that's going to be hammer, pick, pick. We can also do a triplet with hammer, hammer, pick. Okay, we can also do 16th notes, so that's going to be hammer, hammer, pick, pick. And then we can rotate that cycle so that we're not doing it necessarily in the same way, and we can go hammer, pick, pick, hammer. And one of the coolest ones we can do are groups of 5 by doing 3 hammer-ons and 2 picks. And these can be in different orders and different combinations, but the basic one is going to be 3 hammers followed by 2 picks. And again, if we cycle it, we can go hammer, hammer, pick, pick, hammer. And finally, we can go hammer, pick, pick, hammer, hammer. So with all of these different groupings now available to us, and more because we can combine 3s and 4s to create 7s, or different 3s to create cool different 6 kind of sounds, there's a lot of rhythmic possibility available. And not only are the rhythmic possibilities nearly endless with selective picking, but we can apply this technique to basically anything that we would normally play. So think of selective picking as just another way to pick, or another way to attack the notes. The big question is, what notes are you going to play? So we can use this with kind of riff type material or just power chord material, and that's kind of what has been in the examples. We can also use it with chords and arpeggiate some chords. You can also do it with scales. And anything else really that you can think of. So to practice this stuff, grab your metronome first and foremost, put it at a tempo that you can comfortably play at and comfortably coordinate your hands, and then either using some content that you found online or making up your own, practice some different rhythmic cycles and rhythmic patterns between your 2 hands to get that coordination up to speed. Exercise 2 is a very short example or short etude of something I've written using the selective picking technique, and it is based on triads. So the grouping of those notes in terms of the rhythms are 4-3-5-5, 3-4-5-3, and that repeats on the second line as well. So to create this exercise, I basically just took triads moving down in thirds, and then broke it up into these rhythmic groupings based on the selective picking that I wanted to practice. And that's going to be about it for today's tutorial on selective picking. Like I said earlier, adding the pick back into the equation is not too difficult, but what really takes time is getting your head wrapped around these rhythmic cycles and different rhythmic groupings, and especially because now they're split across 2 hands and not just contained within the right hand. There's going to be one more video in this little mini-series about selective picking, and that one is going to go over combining other techniques such as hybrid picking or thumping with the hammer-on from nowhere in selective picking. I didn't want to include any of those techniques in these first 2 videos because those 2 techniques can really complicate matters, especially if you don't have them comfortable and down in your playing already. If you like what I'm doing on this channel, you can support me by buying me a coffee down at the link in the description. It keeps me caffeinated and lets me keep pumping out these videos to teach you guys new cool things on the guitar. And if you want online lessons, I also have a few slots available for those, so you can check those out in the description below as well. But with all that said, I hope you have a great rest of your day wherever you are in the world, and as always, happy practicing.